Hi, I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the Resident Legal Diva, and it's time for Melba Make It Make Sense.
And I don't understand anything anymore.
The topic I'm going to talk about today is the hypocrisy of selective outrage.
How dare you?
Selective outrage is not a moral failing. It is a political strategy. Let me tell you why. It's what happens when a community or basically a group cares more about scoring points against an opponent rather than upholding a consistent moral principle. It proves that what truly drives the public discussion is not a shared value, but a tribal loyalty.
2 men enter, 1 man leaves. 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. 2 men enter, 1.
And that's not good.
I think we need to take a step back and look at the contrast here. When I worked as Deputy Cabinet Secretary in the White House, we could talk to every single cabinet except for one. That was the Department of Justice. We couldn't even send holiday party invites because we believe in that independent DOJ. The Trump administration and Donald Trump is sliding into the DMs of his AG to choose who to prosecute.
Raggedy man.
Let me give like 3 examples pulled from recent history that demonstrate this hypocrisy. And we're going to start with the highest form of political tribalism, mourning the lives of our own while ignoring the tragedy of others.
America seemed to process and then move on from the assassination of Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman.
In the past year, we saw 2 near identical politically motivated murders, and the public's reaction was anything but symmetrical.
His name will stand etched in the history besides the likes of JFK and Dr. King, who marched into the jaws of hatred, sacrificing his safety and ultimately his life to bend the arc of history towards justice.
So in September 2025, we saw the murder of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, and that ignited an instant and humongous firestorm on the political right. And you had folks like the president immediately framing it as the proof of the radical left, being incredibly violent and out of control.
But he's just a raggedy man.
And the outrage was sustained, it was centralized, and it was used to attack the legitimacy of the entire opposition. But just months prior, in June of 2025, the murder of former Democratic Senate Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband received a totally different response. It was a targeted, politically motivated killing, yet it was met with relatively muted, fleeting attention and condemnation from the opposing political camp.
I've been stuck on this assassination because so many of the details point to one of the more animating culture war topics in America, abortion. I've been diving deep, watching old committee hearings and even a presidential debate. And what I know is that Melissa Hortman's assassination comes after years, decades of right-wing commentators doubling down on false narratives about abortion laws in the country more broadly, but Minnesota specifically. But we may have a clue.
The churches are so messed up.
In a recently resurfaced clip, Vance Bolter, the alleged shooter, is heard decrying that
They don't know abortion is wrong, many churches.
Again, I won't pretend to know the intent or the heart of the man accused of assassinating Representative Melissa Hortman. But what we do know is that the threat of political violence is on the rise.
So the hypocrisy here is clear. The outrage is not about the principle of condemning political violence. It's about weaponizing a tragedy. The loss of life only matters when the victim's death can be framed as a sin committed by the opposing tribe.
2 men enter, 1 man leaves.
Look at this from financial crime perspective. So on one side, and this is all at the behest, at the request of the Department of Justice, on one side you have the aggressive targeting of political rivals on minor financial charges. For instance, you have what's happening with New York Attorney General Letitia James, which, by the way, there is no evidence there, and she's totally not guilty, just in terms of the fact that this was about her co-signing a loan, which is totally legal, permissible, and is not mortgage fraud. And then you have also the Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, who also has faced politically driven mortgage fraud investigations and indictments.
Justice is only a roll of the dice, a flip of the coin, a turn of the wheel.
And the charges are basically focused on a technical, ambiguous discrepancy over property usage. And these are scenarios that legal experts widely confirm are almost never prosecuted under normal circumstances. But again, making it very clear what AG Letitia James did in co-signing a mortgage for a family member is not illegal, is totally permissible, and is not fraud. And Federal Governor Reserve Cook, who was accused of having 2 primary residences for the purposes of getting a better mortgage rate, well, she didn't claim 2 primary residences. She did what she was supposed to do, claim she had a primary residence, and claim that she had a second home, a vacation home, but it was not her primary residence. Not illegal. But regardless, the Department of Justice is weaponizing these mortgage fraud charges to attack political enemy.
He's accusing Letitia James of this mortgage fraud. There are 3 cabinet members who committed mortgage fraud that he's just letting fly.
But he's just a raggedy man.
You have political allies whose identical or similar behavior is completely protected. So you've got top administration folks like Labor Secretary Lori Chavez DeRaymer, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin, all held dual primary residence mortgages, which is illegal. That was the same practice used to attack AG James and Governor Cook, even though that's not what they did. But these people who clearly have committed a crime are escaping any kind of accountability. The hypocrisy here is that the full force of the federal government and the public's moral condemnation is brought down on the administration's political enemies, while allies with identical financial practices and even more egregious financial practices are granted immunity from any investigation or scrutiny. The issue is not the crime. And then lastly, looking at whose trauma we remember and whose we ignore, and treating victims as props for a narrative which is disgusting. The brutal stabbing of Ukrainian refugee Irina Zarutska on a North Carolina train in August 2025 by a mentally ill person with a history in the criminal justice system, that whole story became a major, sustained national news story. Why? Because the narrative, unchecked urban crime, uncontrolled migration, woke cities failing to protect citizens, and it perfectly fueled a pre-existing political agenda. However, an equally horrific stalking and killing of 2 girls by a perpetrator who was a self-proclaimed fan of Charlie Kirk.
A fellow gamer asks if he'll drive to Maria's house to watch the pizza be delivered.
Oh, I did that the last time, but the mother saw me pull up in the car. Whenever Maria sees the pizza guy come, better think of Charlie Kirk for making fun of his death. Stupid clown.
Received significantly less sustained national coverage, particularly from the same conservative media that championed the Zarutsky story. So the selective nature of the outrage is driven by the narrative, not the tragedy. The Zarutska death was elevated because it fit the narrative of the enemy being responsible for social decline. The stalking murders were minimized because the perpetrator's political ties were inconvenient and failing to fit the prescribed script. In all 3 cases, the outrage is not an authentic response to an injustice. It's a cynical political tool deployed only when it serves the cause of the tribe. Yeah.
This is the truth of it. Fighting leads to killing, and killing gets to warring, and that was damn near the death of us all. Look at us now.
Sound off in the comments and tell me what you think. I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the Resident Legal Diva.
Ain't we a pair?
And I hope I made this make sense. Take care.
Goodbye, soldier.